I feel like my audio should sound much better. I don't know if you notice it, but
No, you sound normal like you do every week.
so my Yeti mic, the settings like were kind of screwed up before, and now they're elite. They're where they.
Elite. Doing great.
All right, we're live, so I'm gonna tweet out the link real quick. All right. Let's roll champagne.
I've never had somebody refer to me as that outside.
Three, two, one. Welcome to the Round the 412 Fantasy Football Show, proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, and more. You follow at Crowworthy on Twitter. Visit us at the crowworthy.com city page, Pittsburgh city page, for podcasts such as this one, blogs, and more, including gambling, including fantasy football advice, which we're about to give you on here as well. I am Smitty. With me, as always, is my co-host, Donnie Druin.
Had to throw on the Lakers jersey.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that was a Mamba jersey at first. I knew it was a Lakers jersey. I just assumed it was a LeBron.
Yeah, no, this is the only Lakers jerseys I own are Kobe ones. Probably have to add LeBron if he clutches this NBA Finals, which he obviously will. So.
Wash King.
Wow, yikes.
No, that's what he was calling himself that because people were questioning if he was washed.
Oh, washed.
I'm a LeBron stan as well. So
no, I have LeBron's jersey, but the thing about that is that it's a white shirt, and I look big as hell in white shirts. I knock that out,
I'm wearing a white shirt right now, the new Keats Barber shirt. So, I mean, I guess that's a good way that I can just kind of tell you guys about Keats Barbershop right off the bat. Keats Barbershop, it's an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturday. Every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keats Barbershop, 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. I don't know about you, Donnie. I got some solid feedback about how we decided to start doing the show now. Breaking up the positions, 2 and 2. So this week we are going to alternate from what we did last week. So I will take the QBs and the tight ends. You got the running backs and the receivers. We'll go over that in a little bit. I think what we got to talk about first, though, very similar to week 2 when we saw, two of your star running backs in the football world and especially in the fantasy football world go down. We lost 2 more top 10 fantasy football running backs this past week, and Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb, both looking at, up to 6 weeks out. And they're very different situations because you look at Kareem Hunt, who was already giving, RB2 flex value. I mean, he's going to be a top 10 play now, in my opinion, especially the way Cleveland's running the rock. Yeah. You look at the Chargers, it's a little different scenario. I mean, you got Josh Kelly, you got Justin Jackson there. Josh Kelly, who has at times looked very good. In my opinion, I think he will be the first one to get cracks. I know he's a little bit banged up too as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that backfield works out. Like I said, though, 2 very different situations. When you have a guy like Kareem Hunt, that's a pretty nice insurance policy for them, and they signed him to a new 2-year deal for that reason. But where are you at with those backfields?
Yeah, I'll touch on Dearness Johnson a little bit later, the third string Cleveland running back that came in. 13 carries for 95 yards, so he didn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination. Just kind of a question mark on how much of the workload they're willing to give to Kareem Hunt, or if they still want to maintain that 2 running back backfield in Cleveland. On the other side of things, Austin Eckler, we've already seen Josh Kelly. While not being as effective as a guy like Kareem Hunt, he certainly has, provided and carved out a standalone fantasy role with the presence of Eckler. So he didn't do very much after Eckler got hurt, and so some people are a little worried about that. I'm a little bit curious because I know you're a Nick Chubb owner yourself, right?
I'm actually not. I didn't make that
That's
trade,
right.
so
You shipped him away, huh?
I never traded. That trade was offered to me. I didn't accept it.
Okay.
So I got a trade offered to me where I would have been getting Cooper Kupp and Nick Chubb, and I would have been giving away Devontae Adams and Todd Gurley, but I declined the
Well,
trade.
now I feel phenomenal for telling you no. So, you know.
Yeah, even though Devontae Adams himself hasn't played since then, but he should be back. I mean, he says he could have gone this week. They have a bye week, and then he should be back. So, yeah, it is what it is. But no, I am not a Todd Gurley, or I'm sorry, I am not a Nick Chubb owner. Um, However, I do use him a lot for prop bets and in daily fantasy. So, yeah, I still kind of hate seeing him injured.
Yeah, definitely. Both backfields though they already have very capable backs in their backfield. So both the Chargers and Browns do. Obviously, I do favor Kareem Hunt's production a little bit more than Josh Kelly, just because Kareem Hunt we've already seen him. We know what he can do whenever he's with Kansas City. He's proven himself very valuable. Like you alluded to with the contract extension this year, and then you still have Josh Kelly, the rookie running back at UCLA, who does look very good so far, but he hasn't quite carved out the role that Kareem Hunt has. So it'll be interesting to see. I think you're right. I think 6 weeks is about the timetable for both running backs to return. But it's still very early in the season, and it's a good thing we talk about waiver wire pickups to help these people through these times.
Exactly. And waiver wire, we will get into that a little bit later. I just wanted to touch on the fact that we've now seen 4 guys who you're probably taking round 1, if not very early in round 2, go down, with injuries that are going to knock them out. I mean, Chris McCaffrey, I don't know. He's still a couple weeks away, I believe. Obviously Saquon done for the year. Austin Eckler now out 4 to 6 weeks, and they said Nick Chubb's going to be about 6 weeks. So huge hits to your fantasy teams. Again, we stress this all the time. You're not going to win or lose your league on draft day. It's about the moves that you make along the way, which we are here to help you with. So we will talk about our waiver wire in a little bit. So I do see that there's a couple people in chat right now. Thanks for joining in. If you guys have any questions, shoot them at us. I know that because I am watching on my TV, I know that they disappear after a little bit. So if I missed something already, please just retype it. If it was actually a question, if you were just saying hello. Other than that, we can get right into it. As I said, we're going to be flip-flopping what we did last week. So I will handle the quarterbacks and the tight ends. And I'm going to start with tight ends. And my tight end number 5, this is going to come as a surprise. I am throwing an absolute shot in the dark here. I feel like I'm going Dalton Schultz, the tight end of the Dallas Cowboys against the New York Giants here. That aerial attack in Dallas, even though, they're sitting at 1-3, that aerial attack, it's too good to pass up on, even though he's the 4th option in that passing attack. The value that he's brought to them since Blake Jarwin has gone down has been too much for me to ignore. A matchup here with the Giants is absolutely mouthwatering. He's fine in the end zone. He's catching about 6 passes. He's getting targeted like 8 times with Dak throwing the ball 50 times. I think that, he just continues that production here against the Giants. And at a position where we know who like the top 4 are, and that 5th guy is kind of a rotating guy, I like Dalton Schultz this week.
Yeah, no, I really can't fault you for that pick for 2 reasons. One, because picking any tight end to rank in your top 5 is absolutely a shot in the dark after Kelsey and Kittle. And then number 2, Dallas always historically performs very well against the New York Giants. It at least has over the last 5 or 6 years. So definitely not a bad shot in the dark if we're going to take one.
Yeah, I don't know if Stubbs is coming in here to suggest that he be in my top 5 or just take a shot at me losing my fantasy game due to one Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. However, they are on a bye week now, so that's why he probably would be my tight end number 5 simply for what he did to my fantasy team. Somebody else just came in here and said, I received a hell of a deal. I traded Ryan Fitzpatrick for Cooper Kupp, 1-for-1.
No way.
The guy had to do the deal because his starting QB was Brett Rippon. His starter was Cam, but we all know what happened there.
Wow.
I
Flip
mean,
of the century.
Yeah, why would that guy? I mean, why is that guy not just doing some work on the waiver wire or something? I mean, you're talking about Cam might miss a second game. We don't know. He could be back after just one. Like that's just a move, a panic move, in my opinion, for that guy.
I'd be interested to see the guy's receiver depth, the guy who traded for Fitzpatrick, if he's able to just give away Cooper Kupp like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, but hey, good on you for getting that's incredible value in a trade right there. My tight end number 4, this gets pretty standard at this point for me. Dalton Schultz is the guy I was excited to come in here and talk about just because it's kind of, like I said, a shot in the dark, a dart throw, if you will. Darren Waller against Kansas City. I don't love this matchup, and we've seen Darren Waller's production kind of dip a little bit since absolutely blowing up that Monday night game against New Orleans. Not that I thought it would consistently be there, but he is the main guy in that passing attack. In this game, where you expect that the Raiders are going to be trailing and have to keep up with Kansas City by putting points on the board, they're going to have to throw the ball. I think Darren Waller is obviously the number one beneficiary of that, so I think he's in for a pretty solid day against the Kansas City Chiefs. Granted, I do not love the matchup itself.
Yeah, and he's going to be the guy that's always like in your top 5 no matter what, because we have seen him produce, and like you already alluded to, he hasn't quite produced like he has, but you have to think that in a game against the Kansas City Chiefs that they're going to either one, be going blow for blow with them, or two, being like playing catch up with them. So I think that bodes well for Waller's outlook either way.
And then we move on to a guy that hopefully is back on track for fantasy owners. Mark Andrews going against the Cincinnati Bengals is going to be my tight end 3 here. Very disappointing first few weeks. Looked really good, though, in Baltimore's last game out, catching a couple touchdown passes. And that's the player that we saw a lot of last year. Lamar Jackson's number one option in the passing game. And while they are a run-first team, when they do throw the ball, you think he's going to be the big beneficiary of that. Cincinnati, honestly, they've been pretty good against the pass this year for some reason, at least up until that game against Jacksonville, where Gardner Minshew did have a nice game. DJ Chark did have a nice game. I think that's probably more the team that they are. But, 3 out of 4 weeks so far for Cincinnati, they haven't been that bad against the pass. And we'll see, how they fare against Mark Andrews. My gut tells me that he's still going to be a top 3 play. And if there is one guy in that passing game that is going to absolutely feast, it is Mark Andrews.
Yeah, very nice bounce back week. I don't want to pat myself on the shoulders a little much. I was not one of the people that freaked out. I still had him in my top 5. I believe I had him top 3 as well. But we always talk about it. Outside of Kittle and Kelsey, Mark Andrews is probably the number 1 tight end. And yeah, very deserving. It looks like the Ravens offense is back on track, and I expect that to continue this week.
And then, obviously my top 2 are my top 2, and it's really just about the order that you want to go in because of the absolute monster game that George Kittle had in his return against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. He comes in my number 1. So Travis Kelce's going to be my number 2 here against the Las Vegas Raiders. I already mentioned this matchup coming off the game against the Patriots, where he did lead the team in receiving, but it was still just 70 yards. And a lot of that, I believe 50 yards came on 1 reception. So I feel like there's still more in the tank for Travis Kelce than we've seen this season, even though I've had him at the top of my list. The production's been pretty sporadic, and you could say that honestly for the Kansas City offense. They absolutely blew up in that game against Baltimore, but the offense did not look great against New England yesterday. And there's been times where that's been the case. The game against the Chargers, where was the offense for a lot of that game? But, I think that Travis Kelce's obviously always going to be a top 3 play. The Raiders defense does not scare me. And this is a prime matchup for him. But, I like Kittle going against the Dolphins just a little bit more. We'll see what happens with the QB situation. Nick Mullins got benched in replacement of CJ Beathard. Hopefully Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. That would be a boost for him. But no matter who the quarterback is, we saw the numbers George Kittle put up in a game where they did make a change at the quarterback position. So he's capable of doing that regardless of who's throwing him the ball.
Yeah, the entire 49ers passing attack didn't look terrible as well. Brandon Ayuk, the rookie receiver out of Arizona State, had a second consecutive week where he scored a touchdown. So he looked very good. They're getting Deebo Samuel back. So, but I don't expect the arrival of Deebo Samuel or the uptick in, targets or receiving yards for a guy like Brandon Ayuk to affect anything George Kittle does. You or I could play quarterback for the 49ers, and I think Kittle would still put up 40 this week.
Yeah, I do want to mention, there's actually, Stubbs just mentioned a name that should come up later in the show, but I like to kind of address these comments as I see them. Just due to injuries and bye, he will be starting Big Ben, James Conner, and Eric Ebron, all 3 of those guys in this upcoming Sunday's matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. To be honest with you, that's fine by me. I don't have a problem with starting all 3 of those guys in that matchup. You look at the Philadelphia defense; they have not been good. They're very banged up, and even fully healthy, we know that secondary is not very good. Besides Darius Slay, obviously, the pass rush has been pretty solid. Actually, I believe they're around the lead in sacks, if not at the.
They are. They're the lead in sacks at 17. Then the Steelers are right behind them at 15.
Right. Okay. So they can get after the quarterback, but at the same time, I like the way that our protection is held up for Big Ben. Hopefully that continues on Sunday. That's where the battle is going to be won. It's going to be won in the trenches. I think James Conner, could have a solid day, but it's really, and like I said, I'm going to talk about this later, so I don't want to fully, spoil it. But Eric Ebron is going to come up later in the show as a guy that I want to talk about a good bit. So, but I just want to say, Stubbs, I don't feel that uncomfortable about your position having to start all three of those guys. I don't know where Donnie stands on that, though.
No, I'm actually kind of in the same predicament as well. I own both Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara in my home fantasy league, and I am entertaining playing both of them this week, just because Aaron Jones is on bye and Christian McCaffrey is still on IR. So I'm kind of like I've been debating that in my head.
Wait a minute. So you have Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Aaron Jones?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what an 8-man keeper league does. So
8-man keeper league, and you had the first pick, right? So
yeah. So I kept Kamara from last year, and then I had the number 1 pick, so I drafted McCaffrey, and then I traded up in the second round to get Aaron Jones.
So how was McCaffrey not kept? Was he kept the year before, and you can't keep him?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we only have a 2-year rule, so you can draft him, and then you can keep him for a second year, but after that they go back into pool of players just to keep everything fresh.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Well, I don't know if you would do your running backs, receivers first, but let's roll.
And we can continue the trend of pass catchers. I could definitely do receivers. A little bit of a not a stretch, but names I definitely did not think I'd be putting up here in my top 5. Tyler Lockett comes in as wide receiver 5 for me, going against the Vikings after a very dismal performance last week. And I guess you could say that for Seattle's entire offense. Russell Wilson didn't look quite like the MVP Russell Wilson, that we've seen in the past. I do want to say the Seahawks did cover by 5.5 though, so I did win some dough off that. So that's the only thing that matters in my eyes. So moving forward, going to week 5, Vikings are allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game. I'm expecting a huge bounce back opportunity for Tyler Lockett and the rest of the Seattle offense.
Stubbs said, with those running backs, who are your receivers? Me, Smitty, and Sarge.
No, so I receiver, I start Tyler Lockett and then Robert Woods.
I mean, yeah, once McCaffrey comes back, I don't know who the hell is going to beat you. But
yeah, I'm 3-1, and then the only guy I lost to is the only undefeated team in the league right now.
Who's on his roster?
Man, let me I'll pull up his roster really quick.
I would guess like Dalvin Cook.
All right, so Lamar Jackson, Ezekiel Elliott, Jonathan Taylor, Odell, Calvin Ridley, George Kittle, Juju in the flex, and then on his bench he has Miles Sanders, Darren Waller, Kyler Murray, Mark Ingram, Aaron Rodgers, and Devontae Adams.
Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray.
And Aaron Rodgers, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, I missed Aaron Rodgers. What the heck?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I would guess that's going to be a championship.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So somebody else just came in here. Yo, would you trade Antonio Gibson and David Johnson for a CMC? I currently have Kamara. I'm sitting at 3-1, 14-team PPR. Also have Edelman, Evans, and Hilton as my receivers.
Edelman's been kind of disappointing despite his target share. So is T.Y.
Yeah, there's not receivers involved in that trade anyway. I guess he just wanted to throw that information in as well. But the trade was Antonio Gibson and David Johnson for Christian McCaffrey.
If you could pair that up with Kamara in a 14-team league, oh yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, granted, I am a huge
like
Antonio Gibson fan. David Johnson's been pretty solid. He's been all right in Houston. I have him in a league, so I know where his production's been. I think I do that too, and it's nothing against Antonio Gibson. It's nothing against David Johnson, but we're talking about Christian McCaffrey here. If someone's willing to sell him for that just because he's going to miss, another game or two, whatever it might be, I think I have to do it again. Yeah, mainly because you're talking about 14-team PP. Like in a 12-team league, nobody's putting those guys together. In a 10-team league, that's not happening. Donnie just so happens to be in an 8-team league that's a keeper where he also got the number 1 pick. Like nobody else has the option to pair those guys together. I love Anthony Gibson. I like David Johnson, but I'm absolutely infatuated with the idea of Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara on the same team.
Yeah, you have to think CMC's worst day is going to be a above average day for both of those guys. So, especially in a 14-team league where you're going to face not weaker rosters every week, I would say. If those two even have the days people think they're going to, it's a win every week, no doubt. So yeah, I would definitely pull the trigger on that trade.
Yeah, I mean, 14 teams, it's pretty much like you had the first 2 picks of the draft.
Right.
If you put those guys together, and that's actually what he just said. Beefy has a question before we move on. He was waiting for till we got to the receivers to ask this. Deontay Johnson versus Philly or Tyler Boyd versus the Ravens. I'm leaning Deontay Johnson as the obvious answer because of the defense, but Boyd is definitely Burrow's number 1, it looks like, so I thought it'd be worth asking.
Yeah, that Baltimore secondary just scares me. It's so good. For my money, it's the best secondary in the league. And I just think Deontay Johnson gives so much more upside, especially against Philly's defense this week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Darius Slay is going to be the guy matching up with him. I'm not sure how those guys will be deployed. But like you mentioned, it's more about Baltimore's secondary for me. Granted, we saw what Kansas City did, but that's not the way that Tyler Boyd wins. He's not going to win with speed like Mecole Hardman or Tyreek Hill did against that Baltimore defense. Peters and Marlon Humphrey are going to be able to keep up with Tyler Boyd. He's going to have to win in a different way. And I'm sure Tyler Boyd, he's capable of having a nice day against those guys. But Deontay Johnson, he fully cleared the concussion protocol. He's going to be good to go in this game. I really liked him for last week, assuming that, he would be able to go against Tennessee. I liked him the week prior. I love Deontay Johnson every week. I just think that, you look at that target volume, 23 targets in the first 3 games before obviously getting hurt. He's been a target monster. Big Ben loves throwing to him. We talked about the rapport that he had with Juju being the only guy that he had like a established connection with. Very early in this season, it looks like Deontay Johnson is his go-to guy, and going against the Philadelphia secondary that does not scare me compared to a Baltimore Ravens secondary that does scare me, I'm going with Deontay Johnson in this one, but it is a little bit closer than I think the way that he was asking it. I do think that I would consider Tyler Boyd there. I understand the hesitation with Deontay Johnson coming back off the injury and everything like that, but he'd be my play. Or Justin Jefferson versus Seattle.
Just Jefferson. Yeah, Seattle. I'm actually about to talk about them in a couple minutes, but absolute worst pass defense by far. So
yeah, and I'm not so sure. I don't think that Jamal Adams is going to be ready to come back, right? I mean,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, he might have just been. And obviously, that name is a little. You talk about Deontay Johnson, Tyler Boyd, kind of being the debate there, but when you throw in the matchup that Justin Jefferson has, granted, he's not the number 1 pass option there, at least yet. Obviously, Adam Thielen there, and he had a nice game this past week. Oh, man, that's a tough call for me.
I'd say Jefferson just based off the matchup.
I think I'd have to think about this more. So you can keep talking about your receivers.
By
the way, I guess I never talked about it. Tyler Lockett's your number 5. I love that because, we went back and forth when we were still both doing our rankings, and I had DK Metcalf as a top 5 guy. One of Seattle's receivers I feel like are going to be in the top 5 pretty much every week. With the campaign that Russell Wilson's having. So
definitely. So wide receiver 4 this week for me is going to be Amari Cooper versus the New York Giants. I feel like he's one of the safer receivers in fantasy football right now. Had a season high 33.4 points in PPR formats last week. Finally got in the end zone, so it's very nice dividends for Amari Cooper owners to finally see him get the extra 6 points for a touchdown. Not a super enticing matchup. The Giants defense is kind of like average, a little bit above average, just in terms of passing defense. But Amari Cooper's been super steady, and he always carries that high ceiling with him. We saw that last week. And while I don't think he scores, 33 points again this week, that's very well possible. And yeah, he's on pace to have another amazing year.
I mean, his floor is very safe with the amount of times the Cowboys pass per game. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that would have him at his floor is if, CeeDee Lamb pops off, Michael Gallup pops off. I mentioned Dalton Schultz a little bit earlier. For some reason, like Amari Cooper is anything lower than the number 1 on that pecking order that particular week. But in most weeks, he's going to be the number 1. He's paid that way. And for a team that throws the ball 50 times a game like they are right now, and I really don't think that their offense is necessarily they got to stop turning the ball over, obviously, in their own end. But really, if they're going with how bad their defense is, they're going to be trailing. They have to throw the ball that many times. It's going to keep them in games. I mean, yeah, the Amari Cooper, you said he's not going to score 30 points again. He might, because that's just the way that they're throwing the football, and expecting that to continue. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility.
No, absolutely. But I do think the reason the passing volume is super high is just because they've been down so much in games. They've needed the pass to ball. I think in this case, because like I said earlier, normally they do very well against the New York Giants. The Giants are still winless in the NFL, and there's a reason for that, obviously. I think Ezekiel Elliott will have himself a nice day, and I guess I'll get into that a little bit later, just in terms of running the ball. Dallas will have more of an opportunity to control the clock and control the game flow. But moving on, wide receiver 3, Adam Thielen versus the Seattle Seahawks. Like I said earlier, Seattle's pass defense is garbage. Yeah, 94 receptions, a little over 1,300 yards, 5 touchdowns on the year thus far, averaging 42 fantasy points allowed to receivers per game. Thielen's been somewhat up and down this year. He's been kind of a roller coaster through 4 weeks of football, but just a matchup, man. He had a phenomenal week last week, and if he continues half of that performance over to this week with a very bad Seattle secondary, I just think he can reproduce again.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that obviously, Russell Wilson, what he's doing with Seattle, they're going to put points on the board because you talked about Seattle secondary, Minnesota secondary stinks too. Without Danielle Hunter, they're not getting after the quarterback as well as they should be. But yeah, I like a lot of points to be scored in this game. You just with the way Minnesota's offense operates, you never know like if they're going to run the ball 30 plus times with Dalvin Cook or what's going to happen. I do like Adam Thielen in this matchup though, just because I don't think that he needs a high volume of targets in this game against that bad of a secondary to have a very productive game. So yeah, I probably if I were doing this would have him somewhere around the top 5, if not in the top 5. So I have no issue with it.
Wide receiver number 2, and I guess I'm surprised he's in here. You've spoken very highly of him throughout the year, so I will commend you on that. Stephon Diggs going against the Tennessee Titans, my wide receiver 2 this week. Titans are allowing 25 points per game to fantasy receivers. Diggs is overall wide receiver 5 in fantasy football scoring thus far. He seems to be getting better week to week. That rapport with Josh Allen just continues to grow stronger and stronger every week, and that's showing. He's currently on pace for 1,600 yards, and he looks like the guy in Buffalo right now. So that's on him for coming out after being traded from Minnesota and just balling out like he has. And it's also on Josh Allen, improving and getting better as a quarterback. So he's the undisputed receiver 1 on that team. He shows that week to week, and I think it will happen again against Tennessee.
I mean, he is absolutely just what the doctor ordered for that Buffalo Bills offense and Josh Allen to continue to progress. Obviously there's still the questions about the accuracy, the deep ball accuracy and other elements of his game. But Josh Allen this year has definitely taken a leap to the next level, 12 touchdowns to just 1 interception. And that's not even counting the touchdowns on the ground as well, which he seems to score 1 a week. So yeah, he's been phenomenal this year. And Stephon Diggs as his number 1 right now leading the league in receiving. I mean, he's the clear cut alpha. John Brown's a nice complimentary piece. Same could be said about Cole Beasley, but it's the Stephon Diggs show when it comes to that passing game, and I expect that to continue. Yeah, this was a guy that for some reason wasn't even put in like the top 20 receivers heading into the year in fantasy, despite the numbers that he put up in Minnesota. That just wasn't that was more so, I guess, just questions about Josh Allen. Yep. But Josh Allen has come out and answered those questions, and then some this year. So he's put together a great campaign, and Stephon Diggs, like I said, leading the league in receiving, been a big part of that. So I like him, again this week to have it definitely a top 5 game. I have no problem with how high you have him, but yeah, I believe this is his first appearance in the top 5.
Yeah, it might be. I know you talk about him very highly, but at least for me, ranking receivers, it's his first time there. Wide receiver 1, no questions here, really. I got burned by him in previous weeks. I'm no longer allowing that to happen to myself. DeAndre Hopkins versus the New York Jets defense. A very average outing last week, 11 points in week 4. Not the DeAndre Hopkins we've been accustomed to and that we've grown to know and love. He's facing a middle of the road Jets secondary, so not too great and not too poor. I fully expect DeAndre Hopkins to bounce back. We've seen what he can do. He's and I think there's not a whole lot of argument against him for number 1 receiver in the league right now. And yeah, I just think Hopkins is incapable of having 2 bad weeks in a row. And his bad week was a double-digit scoring performance, which a lot of people will take from their waiver wire guys or wide receiver 2s week in, week out. So.
Absolutely. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, absolute animal. We talked about it. The connection's there already, but I just think he can continue to get better and better in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Kyler Murray, he's looking for a bounce back, if you will. I mean, especially from a real life perspective. I mean, fantasy wise, he's still giving you 20 plus points a game just because of what he brings on the ground, but he's looked pretty average the last couple of weeks. They're going to be definitely looking for a bounce back. The best way to do that is get your alpha receiver going in DeAndre Hopkins. So I would look for him to have a big game. I do want to say, I hope Scriv is the one that was asked a couple of these questions due to trade stuff. I hope you stick around. Only reason I didn't want to answer that question right then is because Donnie already mentioned he's going to be talking about that specific Browns running back a little bit later in the show. So I do want to save that to be addressed later, but I hope you're still in here. First time I've noticed you in here. So if you are new, please hit that subscribe button. We do this once a week, every Tuesday right here. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and just come in here and chat with us, ask these types of questions. We love interacting with you guys. We can't thank you guys enough for everything. And actually, real quick, I do want to mention as well, before we move on, that thanks in large part due to our listeners, due to all the support that we get, we've gotten our partnership with Manscaped extended. So we are still going to be sponsored by them. We were kind of on a trial period, although we didn't really state that. We were just kind of seeing where it went. Well, it went so well that they want to extend that partnership longer, which is a great thing. So you can still use the code 412 at checkout at manscaped.com to get you 20% off plus free shipping. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about them, just what their mission is and the things that they do. So support for Around the 412 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the absolute best tools for your grooming experience. I have one. I know Tyler has one. I know Stubbs has one. Sarge has one. All of our friends have them. They use the code 412 at checkout to be able to get this stuff. They absolutely love it. Obviously the Lawnmower 3.0 that came out is all the rage, but really the complimentary accessories that go with it, the deodorant, the toner, the cologne, the body wash, all that stuff is phenomenal. It has a very distinct scent. You can definitely tell when somebody's wearing Manscaped stuff. It smells awesome. I don't know if I'll ever go back. So they spent the last 18 months to perfect the Lawnmower 3.0. It's a third-generation trimmer, features cutting-edge ceramic blade technology, advanced skin-safe technology pioneered by Manscaped themselves. The battery lasts up to 90 minutes off its charger. It's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. It's got an LED light, which illuminates the grooming area for a closer and more precise trim. The motor is 7,000 RPM with quiet stroke technology. It comes with a USB charging stand that plugs right into the wall, so you can trim that junk of yours. So again, 20% off plus free shipping when you use the code 412 at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you, and you can thank us.
I could not have said it better.
Stubbs wants to know when he starts getting paid as the gambling analyst. Oh, yeah. So I know that this kind of, obviously, we can talk about other shows of Around the 412 while we're doing the Around the 412 fantasy show. If you are just watching or listening to this show, the following day, depending on when we put this out, it's always the following day that we put the other show out. We do the Pens and Pirates show and also the Steelers show. Well, on the Steelers show the last couple of weeks, we've also been giving our NFL bets of the week. And now Devin Stubbs is going to be joining us from now on to do those NFL bets. He typically fades us. So this way, one of us will be right. So that's going to be a lot of fun. He'll be back tomorrow to do it. So we're excited about it. And if you guys are watching or listening back to this, be sure to catch that as well. Other than that, we'll jump right back into it. I got to give my top 5 quarterbacks here. Going to be pretty standard. Like I said, I'm expecting to bounce back from this guy. Kyler Murray going against the Jets. No matter what he brings with his arm, say he only throws for like 150 yards, he's going to run for about another 80 to 100. So he's still going to end up with a nice fantasy day, even if it doesn't look great on the actual football field. So going against the Jets here, obviously a prime matchup. The Jets, and for my money, the worst team in football. Maybe the only other competition is the other team that plays at MetLife Stadium right now. So, I mean, I love Kyler Murray in this matchup. It's just I love the other guys' matchups and the players themselves a little bit more this week.
Yeah, and excuse me, you have to assume with a guy like Cliff Kingsbury at the helm, at least on the offensive side of the ball, the Cardinals are going to start to figure things out. We've seen the good from Kyler Murray in 2020. We've seen the bad from Kyler Murray in 2020. I just think you have to look at the matchup. You have to look at the weapons around Kyler Murray. You have to look at the things he can do, like you already mentioned. Whether it's through the air or on the ground, he always poses that threat, and that's kind of what you need out of a quarterback, not named Lamar Jackson in fantasy football. So I don't value him with the likes of a Mahomes or a Jackson. But week to week, he just brings that ability to pop off for 30 or 40 points a game.
Absolutely, especially in this matchup against the Jets. I mean, that's the big part of it is they're absolutely atrocious. They can't defend anything. They're terrible in offense too. From what I saw, they're going to hold out Sam Darnold this week. So, but moving on. Oh, we did get a question that relates to a possible transaction. Should I drop Michael Gallup for Laviska Shenault? So I like Chenault quite a bit. He's obviously I think he's separating himself as the number 2 in that passing attack, only behind DJ Chark Jr. But Michael Gallup in that Cowboys offense, I'm hanging on to him, to be honest with you, for now. I understand that the presence of CeeDee Lamb just continues to emerge. Obviously, Amari Cooper's there. I've talked about the tight end position. Obviously it was Blake Jarwin to start, who I thought quite a bit of, and now it's Dalton Schultz coming in and looking like he could potentially be a back end tight end 1 in a fantasy league. I just think that there's so much to offer there in that passing attack that they can support 3 or 4 guys on a week-to-week basis. And Michael Gallup is a talented dude. I talked about him before the season started as a guy that I would watch to break out this year because of how many times I expect that team to throw the football. Dak is on pace to break the record by 1,000 yards passing. I mean, that's not going to – I don't think that's going to continue. Again, game script will dictate that. Say they get up big on the Giants this week, they'll probably go ground heavy. Maybe Dak only throws the ball 30 to 35 times. Even with that, though, and I'm not talking about just this week, just long-term, Michael Gallup's a guy that I hold on to over a guy like Laviska Shenault until I see Shenault really take that next step and be, on an equal playing field when it comes to targets with DJ Chark Jr.
No, and I definitely understand the allure for a guy like Laviska Shenault. I mean, I had him as my waiver wire pickup last week. So, he does it through the air, and on the ground as well. They love to hand the ball off to him. They love to get creative. And that's exactly the kind of guy he was coming out of the draft. He was more of a gadget guy. He could play multiple positions. He's really versatile. And I've known so far through his NFL career, but I just think right now I completely agree with you. Michael Gallup is the more established person. I think has a little bit more upside in the offense that he plays in. I feel like week to week, and we've talked about this previously. There's always going to be one Cowboys receiver that it's like the short end of the stick, between Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb looks very good right now. ESPN is talking about him as a potential must start throughout the rest of the season. So we'll see how that bodes for a guy like Michael Gallup. But Gallup's presence is still there, and until he consistently puts up bad numbers, I'm just not sure I would pull the trigger on that.
Is that even if CeeDee, they have 3 receivers on the field at all times anyway. So he's always going to be on the field. When I say always, I mean for a majority of the snaps. So I don't think that there's going to be a time where you see like just Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup completely phased out of the offense. I just don't foresee that happening. So I'd hang on to him. I do want to, we have a couple more questions here before I move on to my next quarterback, which I absolutely love. We've been getting a bunch more interaction in the chat recently. I don't know what's been going on, but you guys have been awesome recently. So thank you for that. Tyler said, normally wouldn't ask about Daniel Jones, but he has a matchup against Dallas this week, and I was wondering if I should potentially start him over Matt Ryan.
No.
Don't
do it.
No. I can't do it. I mean, I understand that Atlanta's probably going to do the right thing finally and let Julio Jones actually heal. I mean, they're 0-4. They're not going anywhere. I understand Calvin Ridley was held catchless, which, by the way, I mean, Jair Alexander is one of the premier corners in this league, and I hope that game kind of put a spotlight on that, shutting out Calvin Ridley in that game. But yeah, I can't get behind the idea of doing that. Atlanta, who were they played Denver, in a 1:00 game. Denver, obviously, I don't even know who's going to be their starting quarterback. They somehow won a game on Thursday night with Brett Rippon. We'll see if it's him again. No matter the case, I think that this is a bounce back game from Matt Ryan, at least from a fantasy standpoint. Excuse me. Obviously, I don't expect Calvin Ridley to get held catchless again. Russell Gage is there. Zacharias, who kind of, put his name on the map last night with a very good game on Monday Night Football. Hayden Hurst is there. He's still got the weapons, and, he's always good for garbage time, even if for some reason they are trailing the Denver Broncos. He's going to put up numbers. I think that Monday night, this last night's game against Green Bay was kind of an anomaly. I don't expect him to have too many games like that. I will talk about him actually later in the show as a little bit of a disappointment for me. But I can't start Daniel Jones, even in that mouthwatering matchup against a very bad Dallas team. I just don't trust it. So I think Matt Ryan is the much safer option.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Daniel Jones has not been the guy at any point in fantasy football.
He's not it, Chief.
Yeah, just not it. not at Chiefs, not at Cowboy, not at anything, man. I would stay as far as away. I would socially distance to great extents away from Daniel Jones in fantasy football.
Yeah, he's staying 6 feet away from my waiver wire.
Yeah.
And then Anthony jumped in here, said he lost Eckler in his league. Sorry to hear about that. I also lost Austin Eckler. I was thinking about trading James Robinson plus Diggs for Josh Jacobs. I have Hopkins and Cooper, so I felt Diggs was potentially expendable. What do you think?
I don't know. Robinson's putting up pretty solid production. I guess it's just a matter of, do you think that'll hold true throughout the rest of the season?
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of a James Robinson believer.
I kind of am too. He's in my top 5 this week.
Oh, all right. Well,
I'll touch on him a little bit just because we got to address my boy Anthony. He's at 100 scrimmage yards in 3 straight games. At least this week. He's facing a Texans team that just fired its head coach, so they're not going to be all there mentally or probably organized on the field at least. The Texans allow the most rushing yards in the league, so short term definitely would not do it. Would you? I understand the other receivers being there, but the production you'll get from Josh Jacobs, if you think James Robinson will hold up, how much more valuable is that between the couple points per game that you're going to be getting back?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you're starting to flex in this league, so you can use Hopkins, Cooper, and Stephon Diggs, and that's incredible, especially with the numbers Stephon Diggs is putting up. And then James Robinson, who's been, RB2, and I expect him to stay as RB2, borderline RB1 this season. If he's not, and Josh Jacobs is a guy that I think is an RB1, but James Robinson to this point has been the better back.
If you don't think James Robinson will continue the trend and continue to hold up, personally, if you don't think that, I would absolutely pull the trade because Josh Jacobs is a more
non-PPR, by the way.
See, Jacobs does
for me non-PPR. James Robinson I'd take over Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs brings more in the passing game, obviously.
Yeah, that's tough.
I'm slightly a no, and the only reason it's slightly is because I like Josh Jacobs that much. But like I said, I'm a James Robinson believer, and right now Stephon Diggs is leading the NFL in receiving. I just until he's no longer looks like the player he has been, until Josh Allen no longer looks like the player he has been, I'm not willing to trade him. I mean, you've got DeAndre Hopkins, who is arguably the best receiver in the league, Amari Cooper, who's the number 1 for the most potent passing attack in the NFL, and then the guy that leads the league in receiving, all in your same roster. I understand, if Josh Jacobs might be a slight upgrade to your running back room, and, he probably is the safer option long term because, I'm saying that I believe in James Robinson. What the hell does that matter if I believe in James Robinson?
Right.
When it comes down to it. If you believe that James Robinson is at worst, an RB2, I don't make that trade.
Yeah. No, if you think James Robinson is basically just gonna crash within the next couple weeks, and you're trying to sell high, getting a guy like Josh Jacobs back would be very nice. But I'm with you. I'm a slight no on that trade. So,
I am surprised this guy is QB4. I thought he'd be 1 or 2 every single week, but he's not. Lamar Jackson going into Cincinnati Bengals is my QB4. And honestly, the only reason behind it is the matchups that I like in front of him. I almost, I was flip-flopping between him and the guy I have at number 3. I came in with Lamar at number 4 just because I could see this game being very one-sided in favor of Baltimore, and that's the games that we've seen Lamar not put up huge fantasy numbers to start this year because, they go run heavy, and it's not him running the ball. It's, guys like Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, and J.K. Dobbins, although Gus Edwards has led the team in carries 2 of the week so far already. I mean, he's the closer, he's the thumper, he is what he is, and they have 3 pretty much number 1 running backs on that roster. It's just not fair what they have with that rushing attack. But anyway, getting away from that, that's the only reason I don't have Lamar in my top 3 is just because I can see Baltimore getting up very big and then not really doing much through the air.
Yeah, with a matchup like the Bengals, that's definitely one where you do see the Bengals rushing for 230 yards, and it's a mixture of Dobbins, Ingram, and Gus Edwards as well. So I completely understand that. You still have him in your top 5, so it's not like you expect him to have this terrible game at all. But that's super reasonable to have him at number 4, at least this week.
So my honorable mention, I know Beefy's going to get on me for not having this guy in my top 5 yet again. Honorable mention was Josh Allen. I almost put him in here over Lamar, but I didn't. I had to have Lamar somewhere in my top 5. But Josh Allen's still a very good fantasy play week in and week out. Um, Speaking of the Texans, new coach, I'm hoping can help David Johnson turn it on. It's actually a good point. Something we should maybe address because there could be some fancy implications there. Bill O'Brien out in Houston. Romeo Crennel, I believe, is going to be the interim coach, correct?
Correct.
Now, I really don't know too much about his philosophy. How do you expect, the fantasy factor to play into that? Like for guys like Deshaun Watson, David Johnson, Will Fuller, the guys that do have value, typically, what does this mean for them?
So I'm not super sure because I know historically Romeo Crennel, from my understanding, is a defensive-minded coach. So while I'm sure he forgets more offensive NFL personnel stuff than I'll ever hope to learn, that the offense probably won't be touched very much by him, if at all. So I think that might go down to maybe like an offensive coordinator that they have. I don't know specifically what they'd like to do. I'm assuming Deshaun Watson is going to be a little bit more free with play calling. So it might be a little bit more up to him. It's just a super big cloud of uncertainty around the Texans team. And they were already 0-4, and then you just add this to the fire, and it's like you have no idea what to expect out of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of Tyler touched on it. We kind of saw that with Mike McCoy in Arizona. He just fired Byron Leftwich, ended up being the offensive coordinator there, and David Johnson looked pretty good under him in a coaching change. So we'll see if that kind of ignites his fantasy value. That's yet to be seen, but still very interesting. We're going to talk a lot about Bill O'Brien on the show tomorrow, actually, because I got some stuff to say about that situation in Houston. Moving on, though, I'm going to go Pat Mahomes here against Vegas, outside of my top 2. And this is, again, he's had a couple subpar fantasy games this year. He can turn it on at any moment. The whole Kansas City offense can turn it on at any moment. But this is another matchup again, going against Vegas. Vegas, they've been a roller coaster this year themselves. Going out and beating New Orleans and then playing the way that they have the last couple of weeks, not great. So this is a team that I really don't know what to make of. Divisional game, teams in Kansas City's division, especially the Chargers, they have played them a little bit tougher than the rest of the teams in the league. I still like Pat Mahomes in this matchup quite a bit. Again, this is just about I have an MVP candidate in front of him and a guy that's throwing the ball 1,000 times a game. So,
yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Like we see Mahomes every week guide Kansas City to wins, but then whenever you look at his fantasy impact and the numbers that he puts up, it's kind of, I don't want to say underwhelming, but not like Patrick Mahomes level of par that we've seen him play week to week. But yeah, no, standard top 5 play every week, standard top 3 play every week. And there's always that potential for him to have that 40-45 point game, and it can happen like that. So
it happened against Baltimore, but it's almost like people shouldn't have taken him in the first round. Not calling anybody out, but Dad, my QB2 this week is going to be my NFL MVP as of right now. Russell Wilson against the Minnesota Vikings is QB2. Absolutely mouthwater matchup. The Minnesota secondary is atrocious. I'm pretty sure Donnie and I are the starting corners, and Devin Stubbs and Beefy are starting at safety. So not a great secondary by any means. Russ is going to absolutely torch them. Lockett's going to have a big day. DK Metcalf's going to have a big day. I mean, everybody could have a big day in this one. I look for the Seahawks to put up 30-plus points, and Russell Wilson is going to have a field day.
Listen, I completely agree. And to counter that point, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to look very good in a Minnesota Vikings uniform next year.
Oh, you think is that your pick right now?
No, I don't know. I think they end up winning a couple of games. It'll be very interesting to see if the Jets do finish with the number 1 overall pick. What they do with Arnold and whether or not to take Lawrence. But shifting back to Russell Wilson's fantasy impact. Without a doubt, the MVP this year through 4 weeks. He still managed to will his team to a win in week 4 despite a kind of subpar performance. Bounces back Sunday night football game versus the Minnesota Vikings. Man, like it's going to be all systems go. I think they really get their shit together, and Russell Wilson has another MVP day.
It's so weird to me where Minnesota is because that's a team that, I mean, not to call out Beefy and Hunter Homestead, who joined our show the one not too long ago. We were doing our predictions for the divisions, and I was the only one that picked Green Bay, and they both picked Minnesota to win that division. And I
Wow.
was kind of like, I was on the fence about who I was going to pick too. Granted, I thought Daniil Hunter would be, playing. I also expected Minnesota's offense to not look as bad as it has, but man, yeah, I mean, I picked them as a wild card team, so it's not like I was that indifferent on it, but like I am very surprised by how bad Minnesota's been.
Same.
Anyway, moving on. Like I said, there's a quarterback right now that's on pace to break the NFL record for passing yards by about 1,000 yards. That quarterback is Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's going against the New York Giants this week. One of the bottom 3 teams in football. They absolutely stink. My only worry, and the only reason he wouldn't be QB1, is if he doesn't put up a bunch of points early, but Dallas puts up a bunch of points, and then they're running the ball, as you mentioned, like Zeke Elliott just has a big day, and that could, mean that Dak doesn't have as big of a game because they're not throwing the ball 40 plus times as we've seen Dallas do up to this point. We need the Giants to somewhat stay in this game, in my opinion, for Dak to absolutely blow up like we've seen in the past few weeks, the 500-yard games. And I'm not so sure it's going to happen. I don't think the Giants are going to be able to hang as many points up as like the Cleveland Browns did on the Cowboys. I think they'll be able to score a little bit, enough that Dak does put up some decent numbers. But again, if they don't score a good bit of points, this could be a game where it's just, Zeke in the running game and Dak just has a decent day. He's got to blow up to start the game in order to have a big day.
Exactly. Yeah. If it does get to the point where the Cowboys are just running late in the third, fourth quarter, that likely means Dak Prescott took care of business early and often. So, either way, Dak Prescott's going to put up points this week.
All right. And what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'll take it away. Final position rankings for week 5. Talk about the running backs, the bread and butter of fantasy football championships everywhere. Number 5 for this week, our running back 5. A bit of a surprise. You'll probably be not taken back by it. It's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Helaire.
Dude, that was bothering me so much.
Dave. And I get it. DH is silent, sure. But
so much emphasis on it.
Yeah. So the Raiders rank dead last against fantasy football running backs, just in terms of allowing points per game. They've allowed 31 receptions and 276 yards through the air alone, 7 rushing touchdowns on the ground. CEH has hit at least 16 touches every week. He's had a season low 12 points in PPR formats. The upside is obviously there this week. With so many big name running backs out, I was trying to get creative in my top 5 this week, and CEH lands at number 5.
Is it even legal what the NFL is making the Chiefs do? They play Sunday, or they just played Monday. Now they play Sunday, and then they play Thursday.
Well, it'll be nice because they have these things called makeup calls. If Patrick Mahomes gets rid of the ball in some crazy scenario, and the Patriots defensive lineman catches it, just call it down. It's fine.
But I'm not saying from that standpoint. I'm talking about the health of these guys. To play 3 games in 10 days.
No, it's absolutely nuts. It'll happen sometimes. I think the Cowboys played 3 games in 11 days a couple of years ago. Just absolutely nuts. But it's a COVID world, and we're all living in it. So,
yeah, very true.
Running back number 4, we actually already talked about him previously. Shout out to Anthony. James Robinson at the Houston Texans. Like I said earlier, he said 100 scrimmage yards, 3 straight weeks going against a Houston team that not only fired their head coach, but rank dead last in rushing defense in the NFL. James Robinson can catch the ball pretty frequently, not as much as other running backs throughout the league, but he's still proven to be a versatile back somewhat. But just in terms of running the football, Jacksonville should have a very good day against the Houston Texans, and that's why Robinson's my number 4 back.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading. I mean, James Robinson, I had him on my roster at one point. I had to cut him, and it was literally before the season started. I picked him up when Fournette got cut just to wait and see who the running back was going to be in Jacksonville, and I did have the right guy on my roster. However, when I did that, I still kept Fournette waiting to see where he went, so I dropped my defense. I just wasn't carrying a defense till week 1. Week 1 rolled around. It was still kind of a murky picture, and I dropped Robinson to pick up my defense for the week. So kind of made the wrong call there, but it is what it is. You're welcome, Devin Stubbs. Also, Tyler said, I'm looking forward to the day that Antonio Gibson is in the top 5 rankings, it's coming. Hey man, I hope. I mean, I remember, the videos that I put out leading up to the Senior Bowl before we went when I was doing some research on him. He's a very unique running back, mainly because he also played receiver. They asked him to do a lot at Memphis, and the way that Washington's using him, it's kind of interesting. I'm happy to see that he's getting a little bit more involved in the pass game. I think that needs to continue. Granted, they have like just the pass catching back in J.D. McKissick, who like never runs the ball. That's all he's there for, is to catch passes. But I think that Antonio Gibson, obviously the higher ceiling than J.D. McKissick, he needs to be more involved in that offense. But if you also mentioned that the Minnesota Vikings have the highest grade wide receiver room when it comes to PFF. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, PFF. I'm glad we're using them. So running back 3 is Elliott versus the New York Giants. He's averaging 22 points a game, which the floor is just kind of nuts for him. He hit 20 points last week without reaching the end zone and the fumble attached to his resume. The Cowboys typically play very well for the Giants. I've said that 9 times. I guess I'll make it 10. If we do expect this game to continue like it will, then Ezekiel Elliott will be involved early and often in the passing game, and they'll likely look to him to finish things out on the running game as well. So I think he's in for a very big day. So he comes in as RB3 for me.
Associated over the PFF thing. We're using PFF because this is something this fits on the agenda.
That's
if
right.
We didn't, we wouldn't be using it.
Good. I like that. Smart thinking.
It's got me interested in him was those videos. He was my high score this week. Yeah, I had him on my bench in my one league. He might take over for David Johnson as RB2 in that league, depending on what we see from Houston's offense without Bill O'Brien. We'll see. But anyway, to your point about Ezekiel Elliott, yes, I do expect a big workload. Again, he's going to be involved whether they're running the ball or throwing the ball. Granted, it might be as like the 4th, 5th option in the passing game. He's still going to be, mixed in there a little bit. And should they get up early and often, like we expect them to, he's going to be a huge factor in the second half. So yeah, I think Zeke is in for a big day.
RB2 is going to surprise you. It might not. It probably will. Mike Davis versus the Atlanta Falcons comes in as my RB2 this week. One last week until McCaffrey is supposed to get off of the IR. So, why not go out with a bang? He's at 22 and 23 points respectively the last 2 weeks. Saw a season high in carries and rushing yards last week as well. One last week until McCaffrey comes back, like I talked about previously. Atlanta's allowed the most receptions, allowed the running backs, and the most receiving touchdowns, the running backs as well. Mike Davis has proven himself very valuable in both categories. I really love the matchup this week for him.
I can't wait till I do running backs, because like some of these names are catching me by surprise. And then you got to remember there's like 4 guys that could be in here that are out. So plus you got to take into consideration this is the first week. Well, should be the first week. We did see a couple teams on bye last week, but this should have been the first week for bye weeks as well. So, guys like Aaron Jones aren't playing. So
true.
Take that into consideration. And here we are with Mike Davis at number 2.
Yeah, definitely. The injuries as well play a big factor for that, combined with the bye weeks and everything else like you just mentioned. So I think our top 5s are going to look a little bit different moving forward, like you said, with bye weeks. But RB1, there's not a whole lot of debate. It's going to be Alvin Kamara.
Locked and loaded.
That's right. Los Angeles Chargers this week. He's averaging 32 points per game. He had a season low 20.9 points, which is just absolutely phenomenal as a Kamara owner, can I say. Chargers don't rank too bad in terms of rushing defense. They do rank at the top of the list, actually, in points per game allowed fantasy-wise to running backs. So not a phenomenal matchup for Kamara. But he's still RB1. Every week you have to put him up there as that list, and you have to trust that they'll at least get the touches to him.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say. I'm also a Kamara owner. He has like 30 more points than RB2 or something like that. It's something ridiculous.
It's nuts, man. Like, yeah, obviously, literally speechless is what he leaves me.
Yeah, I mean, he's RB1. Like, you could write that in Sharpie. I'll tell you right now, he's going to be my RB1 next week when I'm back doing running backs.
Great.
Okay, so let's move along to our waiver wires. I did manage to narrow it down to just one guy per position this week. I don't have any honorable mentions. I know that I've had a problem with that in the past. My quarterback here, I've been hella impressed with this guy.
We might have the same guy.
And I'm talking to you, Anthony Lynn. He better stay quarterback. Justin Herbert is my guy.
Oh, we do not have the same guy. Okay, I've also been impressed by him, by the way, though.
Owned in just 17% of Yahoo leagues. The matchups he has coming up: New Orleans, the Jets, the Dolphins, and then the Jaguars, the next 4 games. So, assuming that Anthony Lynn isn't a complete idiot and he stays the quarterback for this team with what he has on that offense, I understand Austin Eckler out. That is, going to be a factor. But, Hunter Henry's got to be more involved. Keenan Allen, just keep doing what you're doing. We'll see about Mike Williams. We'll see what is provided in that running game with Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson. Justin Herbert, though, like I said, only just 17% of the leagues. I think that you could do a lot worse than a dart throw with those matchups he's got coming up.
No, I completely agree. Herbert has looked phenomenal. He's slinging that thing, no doubt. He's
that touchdown throw against Tampa, his first one.
I'm surprised he was able to walk with his ball just dragging everywhere on the field after that. But shifting over to more just like a this week play, even though he's a starter every week for his team. I've talked a lot about the Falcons not having a good defense. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So my waiver wire pickups of the week is going to be Teddy Bridgewater versus the Atlanta Falcons, 12% owned in ESPN leagues, coming off a game with 276 yards and a couple touchdowns, and then also added a touchdown on the ground as well. Falcons are bottom 3 in the league's pass defense. Christian McCaffrey isn't there, so there's no need to feed Darius Sanders. Really like Bridgewater to continue his, back-to-back weeks in terms of good fantasy performances. Yeah, if you're streaming quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater at 12% is probably the way to go.
I actually like that a lot, and he's going to come up a little bit later for me. My running back here, and this is kind of a different direction than I typically go. I'm looking into the future a little bit here and seeing more touches for this guy in the future. Chase Edmonds of the Cardinals, owning just 38% of Yahoo leagues. Kenyon Drake has been struggling there. And, there's been a lot of talk, Cliff Kingsbury trying to get Chase Edmonds more involved. He's the better of the two when it comes to pass catching. We'll see if Arizona's offense, maybe it fits Chase Edmonds more. I mean, Kenyon Drake went there last year and looked very good, but that has not been the case this year, and I'm not sure what the reasoning is. I mean, Kenyon Drake was dealing with a little bit of an injury before the season. I believe he was in a walking boot and crutches shortly before the season started. I don't know if that has, to do with it, but either way, I like Chase Edmonds here, and like I said, owns just 38% of the Yahoo leagues. I think for now he's more of like a stash for me, but he's a guy that I could definitely see getting more and more work each week.
Yeah, what do you think of Kenyon Drake's future in Arizona?
I don't know. I mean, they gave him they gave him the transit. He's playing on the tag this year, right? So I really don't see how he's back.
Yeah, they give him like $8 million, and he's just not producing at all. Luckily, that was just a very short-term contract. But my running back pickup this week is going to be D'Ernest Johnson. I already kind of touched on him a little bit earlier. Owned in actually 0% of ESPN leagues to go grab him. Came in for Nick Chubb after he was injured. I already talked about it. 13 carries for 95 yards. The Browns may still rely on that 2-back system. It's a little bit of a risky waiver wire pickup, though, both short-term and a little bit long-term. I think he's only going to be relevant for as long as a guy like Nick Chubb is out. And, for that time period, we'll even see if they don't rely on Kareem Hunt even more. But, there's a lot of potential with him. He's only owned in 0% of fantasy leagues. So D'Ernest Johnson of Cleveland versus the Indianapolis Colts this week might be my waiver guy this week.
Yeah, we had a question about him earlier. I hope that person's still in the chat listening because they were talking about potentially wanting to pick him up. And yeah, with as often as the Browns run the ball, like obviously Kareem Hunt's there, you can't put that heavy of a workload on him for as much as the Browns run the ball. Somebody else has to be involved. And, say Kareem Hunt takes the Nick Chubb role in that offense. They're going to be looking for somebody to take some of the Kareem Hunt touches that he was getting because Kareem Hunt cannot account for both those guys with as much as the Browns run the ball. Somebody else has to be involved. So, yeah, I like that a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw 0% and I got really excited. So it was like looking at my math scantron after one of my tests in high school.
My wide receiver kind of already came up as a possible trade or waiver wire move that this guy was considering. Laviska Shenault in Jacksonville is going to be my wide receiver, owning just 24% of Yahoo leagues. Jacksonville, they're going to be trailing in a lot of games, which means they're going to be throwing the ball. This guy's gotten 7+ targets in each game. He also touches the ball a little bit out of the backfield. He's only second in targets to DJ Chark Jr. when DJ Chark Jr. has been healthy, so on a per-game basis. I like his involvement to continue to grow. Laviska Shenault's my receiver.
Yeah, and I talked about him either last week or the week prior. So he comes up again as one of those guys. So it looks like he's a bit undervalued, just in terms of the general fantasy community. He's a gadget player. He's going to get touches regardless. So I really like him. Get him all you can. So I really like how you brought him up this week. My receiver this week, and this is solely dependent on if Michael Thomas is not able to go. Traquan Smith owned in 28% of ESPN leagues. Just had a 20-point outing versus the Detroit Lions secondary. Chargers have allowed 5 touchdown passes last week to Tom Brady and company. Not saying that the Saints offense can produce 5 passing touchdowns again, but you certainly have to trust a guy like Drew Brees and friends, especially a guy like Sean Payton calling the plays as well. 20% of leagues, 20 points, like I said last week. There wasn't a whole lot of like wide receiver options for me on the waiver wire this week, just because it's kind of like super top heavy. But Traquan Smith's probably the name that stuck out to me the most.
Yeah, and you mentioned that's obviously like dependent on Michael Thomas coming back, and I definitely like agree with that to an extent. But I think with what he's been able to do in the absence, that he's earned a little bit bigger role in the offense. Should Michael, even when Michael Thomas is back and healthy, so I think that he'll still have a role there. Maybe he's taken over Emmanuel Sanders as the number 2 there because we haven't seen a whole lot of him. So Traquan Smith, with or without Michael Thomas, is a guy that I think is worth having on your roster. Not knowing what people's receivers look like. Obviously, if you're like Anthony here and have Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, and Stephon Diggs, maybe not. But, for teams that are looking for a receiver, I think you do a lot worse than the guy that could very well be the number 2 or 3, if you're including Alvin Kamara as well, pass catching option in offense like New Orleans with, like you said, Sean Payton at the helm of it. So,
yeah, I think we might have the same tight end, just depending on your recent reactions.
Oh, really?
We might. We'll see.
My tight end of the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be Eric Ebron.
Ooh, okay.
He's owning just 27% of Yahoo leagues. This week goes against the Eagles. We saw what George Kittle did, and I'm not calling Eric Ebron George Kittle, but we saw what George Kittle just did on Sunday Night Football, and that's without having a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger throwing in the ball. Eric Ebron's role in this offense has increased week to week. We saw him score a touchdown the Steelers' last time out. I really like this matchup for him. I think that he's going to be heavily involved. I think when they get down into the red zone, he's the top option for Ben Roethlisberger to look to. And I think that he's just going to, he's on this upward trajectory, in my opinion, when it comes to this offense. I think the touches and the targets are just going to continue to go up. So I like him a lot this week.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time before Ebron started cooking for Pittsburgh in the red zone. That came to fruition, not last week, unfortunately, but the week prior to that. It looks like he is one of the guys, like you said, for Ben Roethlisberger, if all else fails, near the goal line or, in the red zone. So a lot of potential for production to come out of that. So I really like that pick, actually. My guy is the guy that actually screwed you over this week in fantasy, Robert Tonyan. 13% owned in ESPN fantasy leagues. He's on a bye week this week, so this is obviously more of a multi-week or like a long-term play. 33 fantasy points last week. The last 2 weeks before that, though, he scored 10 and 16 points respectively. I think you'll take that, streaming a tight end off of the waiver wire. Devontae Adams coming back, that might obviously hinder, his cap a little bit. No cap. But I definitely think that he's earned himself a role in this offense, man. Similar to how you feel about Traquan Smith in New Orleans. That's exactly how I feel about Tonyan in Green Bay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Is it's a pretty similar situation. You're looking at like the top guy in that receiving as a receiving option coming back from injury, but you'd like to think with what he did in absence of him that his role, wouldn't completely diminish. He'd still have a role in that passing game, leading the league amongst tight ends in touchdowns right now. So, I mean, obviously, when you have a 3 touchdown game, it's going to do pretty well for you, just that one performance. But I mean, yeah, he's been productive outside of that game too. I mean, it wasn't just like a flash in the pan one game thing. And we talked about it before the season. Who is going to emerge as the tight end option because Green Bay can never seem to find a tight end. Well, at least very early in the 2020 season, they got one.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham is punching air right now, by the way.
You know what, though? He's not off to a bad start in Chicago.
No, not at all. Him and the other 45 tight ends I have.
Okay, so I, as usual, did my studs and duds this week. You already talked about my stud quarterback, actually. Teddy Bridgewater. with 30.24 points is my stud of the week. I assume he wasn't in many people's rosters. If you did have to play him, man, were you rewarded for that. 3 total touchdowns. You mentioned he threw for over 270. So very nice game from him. My dud of the week just played last night. Matt Ryan going against the Packers and what I think a lot of people thought would be a shootout. Green Bay obviously missing a lot of their, weapons on offense, their top 2 receivers, and they still, it wasn't very close. The game wasn't in doubt in the last couple of minutes. So very disappointing to see Matt Ryan not be able to put up some points and keep up with the Green Bay offense that was completely depleted. I don't know what that means for the Atlanta Falcons offense going forward. Obviously, Julio Jones probably going to miss some time, and that's the right call for them. But man, I don't know what to make of this Matt Ryan thing. I know that we're still on the on board with starting him over Daniel Jones, obviously, but I don't know where I'm at with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, we'll see. We're talking about a guy who won the NFL MVP award just years ago. He still has talent around him. Obviously, I'm just not sure what the problem is. This might be the year that he regresses, like a lot of people thought he would have. But everything's still there, so I'm not really sure. Because even whenever they're down in games, they should still be throwing the ball very successfully and frequently as well. So yeah, I'm puzzled to say the least about Matt Ryan.
Moving on here. My running back's beefy. You've already hit the nail on my head for my receiver. My running back, my stud is going to be Latavius Murray, 20.8 points, 2 rushing touchdowns. As you mentioned, you're contemplating starting both him and Alvin Kamara. He's carved out a role for himself in that offense, regardless, of if Alvin Kamara is there, regardless of if Michael Thomas comes back. When they run the ball, especially around the goal line, he's been the guy. He's getting a ton of goal line work, and it's frustrating as an Alvin Kamara owner. Granted, not that frustrating because he's still putting up huge numbers. You just wonder what it would be like if he was also the goal line back. But right. Latavius Murray's getting his touches. He's still touching the ball 10 plus times a game. And, hopefully that continues when Michael Thomas comes back. But, 20.8 points for a guy that you maybe were throwing in there as a flex, you definitely got rewarded for doing so.
Definitely, yeah. And I entertained putting Murray in my flex. So I sat Murray, and then I sat CD Lamb, and they both popped off for over 20 points in my league. And then my dumbass put Russell Gage in, and obviously not as good as theirs. But like the thing behind that is like they're both playing on Monday Night Football next week. I'm playing against a very inferior opponent. So I'm thinking whether it's Murray or Kamara, they're both going to produce points every single drive from my fantasy team. And I'm just hoping I'm one of those people to where I like to have my work cut out, for me whenever it comes for Sunday night or Monday night. I like having this number I need to know that I need to hit in order to win. But no, I don't know. I might not. It's just it's probably a dumb idea with hindsight me doing it, but you never know.
I hate not having at least one guy playing in the Sunday or Monday night games. I hate when all my guys are done at 4:00.
Yeah, no, I hate that, and then I hate my guys playing on Thursday Night Football as well. I don't know.
True. Very true. My dud running back, already talked about him. Kenyon Drake, only 3.5 points. This was a guy that was being drafted, early second round, RB8, RB9, somewhere around there preseason. Just hasn't produced to that level yet, and that continued this past week. Just 3.5 points, and as I mentioned, I think that we could see Chase Edmonds start to take on a little bit more of a role there.
Yeah, disappointing probably isn't the right word to describe it, but like you said, Chase Edmonds is really starting to step up them. So you hit both nails on the head today, and we're talking about both of those guys. So.
My wide receiver here, actually both guys have been talked about. We know where the dud is going. The stud's going to be CD Lamb. He wasn't the highest scoring receiver, though he was pretty darn close. 22.7 points this week. Absolute. He kind of put himself on the map. I mean, everybody knew who CD Lamb was, but game of the week going against Cleveland, an absolute shootout. This guy balled out, and he showed that, did the Dallas Cowboys need to take him at pick 17? Absolutely not. But by doing so, that offense is just the passing offense, especially, just absolutely ridiculous. If they get any semblance of defense, I mean, that's going to be a hell of a team. But they're probably not going to, and they'll still finish 7-9 or 8-8. So
true. And then that record will probably get them first in the NFC East, and then they'll
true. My dud, I don't know who else it could be. Calvin Ridley, with a goose egg on Monday Night Football. There were a couple times though where it's just Matt Ryan missing him. The first play of offense from them, Matt Ryan almost throws a pick when Calvin Ridley's completely wide open, waving his hand, and then Matt Ryan just lobs the ball to him, and it gets broken up. Another play, if he throws it in front of him in the end zone, it's a catch, but he throws it to where he is, not where he's going. Calvin Ridley has to wait on it. The guy gets there and is able to break the pass up. So Calvin Ridley could have had a very different game. I don't think it's on Calvin Ridley that he didn't. It's on Matt Ryan. But yeah, obviously Calvin Ridley, he's being started as your wide receiver 1 right now with the numbers he's putting up, and he laid a goose egg. So how can he not be the dud?
Yeah, and obviously he'll bounce back, especially if a guy like Julio Jones does miss time. But man, he had all the opportunity in the world. And granted, some of that was Matt Ryan's fault. But I saw someone on Twitter, I forgot who it was, but they were like, we've seen Julio Jones kind of like disappear, like some games throughout his career. And then Calvin Ridley just did that himself, putting up a goose egg. So.
Yeah, it's almost like it's on the quarterback. My tight end, this one seems pretty obvious too. That same game, Robert Tonyan, 30.8 points at the tight end position. I mean, that's just ridiculous, man. I had like a 20-point lead in a lead with still having Hayden Hurst, and guy had Robert Tonyan. I lose the game.
That's how it goes, man. That's how it goes. Probably might not be able to say his name more times in the stud category, so might as well get it out now.
And then, of course, my dud being an owner of this guy. Also, I put him in my top 5, even though I've been a little skeptical of how he would do this year, especially with the other tight end out. I expected a big game. Zach Ertz, 4.9 points. I thought with Dallas Goedert being out, granted the 49ers, not a great matchup, but who else is going to catch passes from Carson Wentz? Well, the answer wasn't Zach Ertz. So 4.9 points. That ain't going to cut it, Chief. He did not look like a tight end 1 in this game.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on with Philly. We'll see.
Philly.
Yikes.
So that about wraps it up. We did get a question just come in here right now from Rock Out, which I don't think I've seen this name in the chat before. So hello, thanks for joining. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button and hitting that notification bell. We are here every single Tuesday for this exact show. Would you trade Melvin Gordon for Mike Davis and Deebo Samuel?
I think Mike Davis is still going to have some kind of role after Christian McCaffrey comes back. I've been high on Deebo Samuel, and I'm very excited to see what he does for the next couple of weeks, although I do think it'll take some time for him to get reacclimated with everything. I still wouldn't do that, though.
I'm a no. You mentioned, obviously, Chris McCaffrey coming back. If Chris McCaffrey's out for the year, probably I would do that, to be honest with you. But Chris McCaffrey going to be coming back. Obviously, Melvin Gordon's role could go down a little bit too when Phillip Lindsay comes back. But I like Melvin Gordon's situation a lot more than I do Mike Davis's. And granted, Deebo Samuel coming back is going to be good, but like Brandon Ayuk is putting his name, on the map as well there. Obviously, George Kittle's there. I do like Deebo Samuel, but I think that Melvin Gordon gives you like RB2 value. I don't think Mike Davis is even going to be like a flex play when Christian McCaffrey comes back, and I don't know what Deebo Samuel's role is going to be, especially right away. So I just hang on to Melvin Gordon if I'm you.
Same, yeah.
Other than that, Donnie, got anything else?
Let's go Lakers. Something up.
That's how we're ending it, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're watching, thanks for watching. If you're listening back, thanks for listening. But remember that you can always head over to youtube.com/C/around the412, hit the notification bell, and be sure to subscribe. And you can come join us every single week when we do this. Ask questions, interact with us. These last few weeks have been an absolute blast.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. We just done our question. Is giving up Judy, Deontay Johnson, and Fournette is that A.J. Brown? For A.J. Brown and Kenyon Drake a good trade? No. Nope, I am not doing that.
No, sir.
One, I think that Jerry Jeudy is going to get better as the season goes on. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. Deontay Johnson, I'm obviously very high on. I think that he's at the very least a flex play right now. I think he's going to be a wide receiver 2 play for a lot of the season. Fournette, I'm not sure where Tampa Bay's running back room is right now. They kind of go with like the hot hand approach, especially when all running backs are healthy. I think Keyshawn Vaughn even has a role in that offense now. we'll see. So I wouldn't be not making the trade because of Fournette in it. Kenyon Drake, we just talked about him. He's been a disappointment there. AJ Brown, I know he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury, though I do like him. He's the top pass catcher for the Titans. I can't justify giving up, Judy and Deontay Johnson for AJ Brown and then Fournette for Kenyon Drake is how I would look at that trade, and that I'm not doing that. So
yeah, I'm not touching that either. I do understand somewhat of the appeal in that trade. You're just giving up too much and not receiving an equal amount. So.
Okay, well, once again, whether you're watching or listening, we appreciate the hell out of you guys. So thanks for doing so. If you want to tweet at us, if you have more questions as the games approach, you can tweet at us at Z23Smitty, at Donnie Druin, or at Around the 412. Be sure to follow us at Around the 412. Follow Crowworthy on Twitter. You can go to crowworthy.com, visit the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com. You can find podcasts like this one, blogs, betting, fantasy football advice on there as well. All that good stuff. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. Until then, good luck. Take care. Be a friend. Tell a friend. We'll talk to you.